Hello, my name is Eric Tomlinson with TomlinsonGroupRealEstate.com, and I'm here to speak with you regarding your interest in perhaps purchasing solar for your home and how that either increases the value or actually hurts you in reselling your home. Did you know there are 3 different ways for you to acquire solar on your home? Most of the time it's on your roof unless you own land and you want to put the solar panels out in the back, but there you can either lease it, you can purchase it, or you can acquire it through power purchase agreement. This last one actually is the only one that doesn't put a lien on your property. We're going to talk about that and how that affects your resale in a moment. But most importantly, if you lease and you purchase, that would be a good position to be in if you plan on never leaving your home. You want to just stay in the place for the rest of your life, then you might want to purchase or lease the solar. But if you're planning on moving in the next 3, 5, 7 years, maybe a power purchase agreement is the better way to go. And the reason for that is this. A lease puts a lien on your home, as does the purchase. Why is that important? We're going to get to that in a moment. It's important to note, though, that when you do a power purchase agreement, it does not put a lien on your home. Why is that an important thing, Eric? Well, let me talk to you about this. When there's an additional lien on your property, a buyer then has to qualify for that extra cost. Like, for example, if you have a homeowners association that's $100 a month, that's probably not a huge deal. People can usually qualify for an extra, 10, 15 grand. That's a possibility. But for many homeowners, they're stretching as far as they can to get the very most home. And so they're reaching for that qualification in most cases, especially first time, possibly second time home buyers. They don't have a lot of equity or a lot of a down payment to create equity in their home. So with that said, it's almost like they're in escrow and they realize, oh my gosh, they're told when you get into escrow, don't buy a car because that will add to your debt to income ratio. And why is that important? Because if you add another $300 or $200 to your debt to income, now you don't qualify for that amount that you're qualified for. Watch this. With every $200, with a $200 payment for a leased, purchased, or purchased solar, the buyer of your home now has to qualify for that additional $200 a month. Now, why is that important? Well, because when you are just paying for electricity, you don't have to qualify for that. It's not a lien on the property, but because you've purchased your solar or you've leased the solar, then it does become a lien. That's almost like buying a car right in the middle of escrow. And how does that pertain to how much you do or don't qualify? Well, we're going to base this next section on those that are conventional buyers or VA buyers. There's the part about the not having to qualify for electricity. Under a power purchase agreement, you buy electricity from a solar company instead of, in this case in Southern California, it's Southern California Edison or PG&E in San Diego. And under the power purchase agreement, it's also important to note that the solar panels are still maintained just like they would be if you're buying or leasing them from the solar company, by the company that you're getting your power from. Now, you buy at a reduced rate, so you lock that in. So let's say, for example, let's just use numbers now. 5, 10 years from now, this may be, the numbers will be different. But for example, let's say tier 1 is 19 cents per kilowatt hour, okay? And that's a reduced rate from the solar company. And then maybe you get to tier 3 or 4 because you're spending so much on electricity that Southern California Edison is actually penalizing you for using so much electricity. Well, in this case, if you lock it in, then let's say you're paying 19 cents a kilowatt hour, and if you use only the solar that you're getting from the power purchase agreement, then maybe that's all you're paying instead of 48, 49 cents per kilowatt hour because you've gotten into tier 3 or 4. So in some cases, when you buy solar, you want to make sure that you're not over buying the amount of solar that you use. For example, if your kids are about ready to move out of the house in the next 2 or 3 years because they're going to college or they're getting married and they're moving on, you probably don't need as much power as what you would need right now in a household of, let's say, 6 people. So that would be a question that you want to bring up to the solar company that you're speaking with. Huge, huge importance. I know that happened for me, and that's hindsight for me. I didn't need 6 people's worth of, or person's worth of electricity in my house. It's just the 2 of us now because my kids have grown. So with that said, having a power purchase agreement, now you're buying that electricity from the solar company. And again, if you start to dip into Southern California Edison, because your solar is not making enough electricity for your use, then you're probably going to go into just tier 1, maybe tier 2, and it's not going to get into the 3 and 4 where you're getting charged twice as much for your electricity per kilowatt hour. And there's the tier 3, I'm ahead of myself. Solar can be very beneficial. It just depends on how you acquire that solar. So again, there's three types of acquisition in getting solar. And solar companies are really good at selling you solar. They're not very good at helping you with a resale on your home. Now, if your solar is paid for, it's paid off, that's going to increase the value of your home. If it's not paid off, then it becomes a debt that the buyer has to incur. Solar companies are always going to say, oh, it's totally transferable, which leads you, the consumer, the seller, the owner of the home, to believe, oh, no problem. The buyer will just pick up the cost because then that's going to be their cost when I sell my home. Problem is they may not qualify. Now, if they don't qualify and there are additional buyers that don't qualify, as soon as they find out that they have to qualify, they're going to realize that other buyers can't, and so they're not going to offer you as much for that home. So what appeared to be a benefit to have solar on your home has actually become a detriment. I have one client that had a $70,000 plus solar bill, which was about $430 a month, and that was almost like paying an extra $100,000 for that house, debt to income wise. So what we ended up doing is I recommended to my client, look, the only way you're going to sell this home is if you reduce that payment from 400, and it was like a 3,900 square foot home. So it did use a lot of electricity. But if we could reduce that in the transfer, then what ended up happening is we could reduce that by paying maybe, let's say, $20,000 off. Could the buyer qualify for that? And in actuality, in this instance, we were able to get the buyer to acquire that extra $50,000 and reduce their payment to like $300 a month for the solar, which was still a deal for that size home. There are ways to negotiate on each deal. Each deal is different, and I pride myself in negotiations. My clients were very, very pleased without not having to pay that off, and in the transition to negotiate that $430 to about $300 a month for the buyer to acquire, and they did qualify, thankfully, which was incredibly unusual. But again, thinking outside of the box, making it work. So let's talk mortgage payment. If a borrower pays about $500, that's principal, interest, taxes, and insurance for a conventional loan, FHA would be different because you've got mortgage insurance, PMI. We're just going to stick to the easy stuff here. So about $500 a month at the interest rates that we're at now, about 3% or a little less in this marketplace. For every $100,000 they borrow, their payment's going to be about $500 a month. Principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. So if they have a $200 a month payment for solar that they have to qualify for, that's as if they're buying a home for an additional $40,000. Let's say you're selling your home for $500,000. Now the buyer has to qualify for $540,000, even though you're not getting $540,000, but that's the equivalent of what their payment would be. So they have to qualify for that much more. Now you've just lost a buyer. You've lost many buyers, and most buyers aren't going to be able to buy your home at that price. And so your home's going to sit on the market. People are going to ask why, and then you're going to get a lesser price for that home because it's going to have to adjust down for a buyer to qualify to purchase your home. Do you see how the detriment occurs over the long term? Solar companies don't tell you about this. Solar companies have no idea. They have no concept. But I work with 80 to 100 home buyers and sellers every year. And because of that, we run into real-time scenarios that need to be solved for our clients and with them. So we're constantly trying to educate. So if you are one of my sellers, one of my buyers who have either purchased or sold with me, please keep this on tap so you can refer to it no matter where you decide to buy or sell, just as a reference, and I'll help you with it. If you have other questions, I'm I'm here and available, which I'll get to my contact information in a little bit. So do you see how solar can actually hinder the sale of your home? It can help it too, but if you're buying solar and then let's say it's all paid for, now you've just paid for someone else's electricity payment for 5-10 years. Is that something you want to do as part of selling your home? Now you get probably a little more for your home, but it's kind of like putting a pool in. You put that pool in for you. You aren't going to get a huge return on a pool. The biggest return on investment, I'm going into other topics right now, but the biggest return on your investment for the improvements to your home would happen to be in the kitchen and the bathrooms, the wet areas. You're going to get a big return on those. This year we saw a rather large return on pool homes, but that's unusual. Usually $50,000-$60,000 pool might make your home worth maybe another 10 or 11,000. We saw about 25 this year, but you still aren't going to get penny for penny. Like I said, solar companies are great at selling solar. They're not good at understanding how solar affects the resale of your home. And most buyers, most home buyers, they purchase at the highest price for which they qualify. If you want to know more about how solar affects your home and or you want to buy or sell, I would love to speak with you. My name is Eric Tomlinson. My number is at 951-970-6727. And if you'd like to read some reviews on how we have performed for our clients, my wife and I, Serena and Eric here, TomlinsonGroupRealEstate.com, just straight ahead, just as you see it, and you'll be able to see what people have to say. Thanks again for listening. Have a great, great day.